Hey, Talking Shizzle listeners. It's always been important for me to align our business with other companies and individuals who share our values, especially those who share a deep commitment to serving nonprofits and social impact. So for that reason, I'm super excited to announce our very first season 2 sponsor, Keela. Keela is a fundraising and donor management CRM that is built specifically for nonprofits by nonprofit professionals. These folks really get it. Their mission is to empower nonprofits to deepen relationships, retain donors, and raise more for their cause. Several of our clients and partners use Keela and have continued to be impressed by just how easy Keela is to use, how affordable it is, and most importantly, the results they see using the platform. The Keela team is also phenomenal to work with. They are super friendly guys, and they have a continuous commitment to equity and inclusion. Now, go check them out. We got a special offer for you. As season 2 sponsor of the Talking Shizzle podcast, Keela is offering our listeners and community 40% off their first year subscription to Keela. 40%, you guys. That is a lot of shizzle. Think about all the other shizzle you can get done by saving that money on your nonprofit CRM. Plus, if you have under 250 records, you can get access to the Keela Starter Program for free. So if you are interested in learning more and booking a demo, go to keela.co/partners/creative-shizzle. That is keela.co/partners/creative-shizzle. Hey, all you lovely people out there. You've got a lot going on in your day with big dreams and big goals for your world. Are you ready to talk some shizzle and learn some shizzle from leading entrepreneurs, changemakers, coaches, and overall interesting people who like to shake things up? I'm your host, Taylor Shanklin, CEO and founder of Creative Shizzle, and I am stoked to bring you a fresh episode of Talking Shizzle today. This show is all about helping you think differently so that you can grow. Talking Shizzle is brought to you by our team at Creative Shizzle, where we help businesses, entrepreneurs, and social good innovators make amazing marketing shizzle happen. Check us out on the web at creativeshizzle.com. Now, let's talk some shizzle. What's up, listeners? We are back with a new episode of Talking Shizzle, and we are going to get into some real interesting shizzle today with our guest, Greg Shanken. That's not Shanklin. It's close, though, guys. It's Shanken. What's up, Greg? How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
It's good to be here with you. How's it going, Will? Sidekick Will, what's up with you today?
I'm doing good today. Not much going on, but feeling good today.
Feeling good on this Tuesday. It's Giving Tuesday. We're recording this on Giving Tuesday today. So it's a special day in many hearts when we think about generosity. So let's get into your story, Greg. Let's go with it. Tell us a little bit about who you are, what your story is, and a bit about your entrepreneurship journey so far.
Yeah, sounds great. I live in Boulder, Colorado, originally from outside Philadelphia. Here, Will, we just figured that out. And my entrepreneurial journey started when I was 5 years old. I was at a friend's house and he had one of those little mini pool tables. And my mom said, "Hey, did you know how he got that? He did something around the house or earned some money and bought it." And like this just explosion went on in my head that like I could actually sort of manifest or control my experience through being an entrepreneur. And my parents were supportive enough to help me place an ad in the paper. I think it was for 70 cents an hour we charged. I was like 7 years old, maybe at that point, to do like envelope stuffing and stamping and things like that. And that's where it all started. And it just continued through my school life and into my 20s and 30s. And I've had jobs along the way too. But that's really where the spark started. I'll say for better and for worse, because I'll probably share some downsides of how that happened or because it started in such a simple way like that, some of the downfalls and pitfalls that happened. But it did light the spark, and that spark is very much alive in me today. So that's how it started. And as of right now, for the past 10 years, I've owned and operated a digital marketing and web development agency called Gloss. We service small, medium-sized businesses with a range of those types of services. We have a really good footprint in the cannabis and CBD space. And then as of this year, have really opened things up further in that space, which I'm defining psychedelic healing and compassionate healing clients as well, which also still includes cannabis and CBD, but also a number of other types of sub niches within that overall space. A lot of that owing to personal experiences that I've embarked on as of this year.
All right, we're going to open that up. We're going to get into that. I learned more about CBD just in the last few years after being in Texas, where it wasn't really there very much. I moved to North Carolina, and personally, I started seeing CBD stores everywhere and kind of learning what this is. And myself, I've done CBD treatments for arthritis and inflammation, but there's a lot of other psychedelic healing that you've gotten into, that you support both in Colorado and support small businesses in this space. Tell us a little bit more about what that is and your journey, like how you got into it.
Sure. So I'll start with what has recently happened in Colorado, which I was so honored to be a part of. I was an ambassador for Proposition 122, which just passed this past election by a large margin, at least by today's standards, 53.5% to 46.5%, so 7%. So that's a lot in our polarized political sphere. And I think it was 180,000 votes. So people in Colorado resoundingly voted yes for this measure, which legalizes psilocybin mushrooms for personal use, which means individuals can grow, cultivate, not sell. There's nothing in this proposition or bill related to the buying and selling of medicines. So it is not like cannabis and CBD in that regard, but it can be used for personal use. And then what I'm most excited about is for therapeutic use. So over the next 18 months, guidelines will be created by the state and an advisory council to essentially define the guardrails, regulations, governance around psychedelic healing using psilocybin mushrooms, who can provide that treatment, how it's provided, under what guidelines, contexts, etc. And then that council will also study 3 other psychedelic medicines, DMT, which is the active ingredient in ayahuasca tea, which I'll likely talk about in this discussion, and ibogaine, which is an incredibly powerful plant medicine from Africa that can really cure addiction and has been shown to cure addiction in a very significant way. And then mescaline, not peyote, and there's a distinction there, which perhaps I'll talk about, but those medicines may be added to this legislation by 2026. So I was very much involved in supporting that bill and helping get it passed. I played a small role, but humbly privileged to be a part of it. And so it was also my first foray into advocacy. I've always been a good citizen. I pay attention, I vote. But this was the first time I was actively involved in something like this. And it was really an incredible experience, learning experience, connection. It really supported where I am in my own psychedelic healing journey. So I could speak a bit about that. Started just this past January. So not even 10 months ago, I attended my first ayahuasca retreat. Ayahuasca is a plant medicine from South America. It's been around for thousands of years, but we're only starting to see the power of it up here, us Northerners, over the past couple of decades, and it's becoming more and more well known up here. But it's been used by tribes in South America for thousands of years. I embarked on this journey for a couple of reasons. I've suffered from lifelong depression, which I had previously treated through SSRI medication, antidepressants for 10 and 20 years, various medications which help but don't heal. And I'm speaking for myself personally. I don't condemn or criticize prescription medication if they work for you. And for many years, they did work for me, but I paid a price for how they work. And so basically, they kind of bring you into a range of emotion that allows you to go on with your daily life in kind of a pretty measured way. So kind of cuts off the highs and cuts off the lows. So in that way, they are doing their job. But what I came to realize, again, for myself, speaking personally, is that I was losing a lot. For example, a big area where, in many ways, but one, people would say to me, I've been an entrepreneur my whole life, and been in the business world my whole life, and people say, well, what does your gut tell you? Listen to your gut. And I'd say, what, gut? I'm just kind of, I came to realize that most of my experience was happening above the neck, intellectually, with my brain, and I've been blessed with a pretty good brain, so that's helped take me pretty far. But those of you listening who have a strong intuitive sense, imagine just flicking that off. Just imagine that. And that's kind of how I was operating. So I was missing out on so much. I wasn't really gaining the full value of all of the gifts that all of us are blessed with, head, heart, gut, right? Intuition and love and brain. So those are some of the big sacrifices that I came to realize. Another one, which is kind of more, maybe even more tangible, is that I never cried. So these medications, again, speaking personally, did a good job of helping me not feel depression, but that means not feeling a full range of emotion on the top end and the bottom end. And I kind of just finally realized that. And as I was coming to that realization, I started learning about plant medicines and psychedelic medicines and how they can help really open you up to your full range of emotion. However, with some of these medicines, from a safety protocol perspective, one must wean off prescription medications for safety reasons. So I had to do that. And I had tried to do that a couple of times previously in my life without success. I went off my meds and depression came back. This time I was kind of resolute that I was going to stick it out in preparation for this ayahuasca retreat. And it really just opened up my world. And kind of to come back to your question of this whole psychedelic realm that I'm in right now, after that experience, it really did open up that full range of emotion. I mean, I laughed, I cried, and to this day, I laugh more, I cry more, I feel more. I now have full use of my gut and my heart, and as complementing my brain and intuitive self. And that just really opened things up for me in terms of business, because after coming out of that experience, I realized that that was the ecosystem and space that I really wanted to serve. And again, just kind of building on what we've done in cannabis and CBD, but just now having a wider array of businesses, nonprofits to serve. So that's a bit about what brought me here in this 10-month journey that feels like a lifetime of 2022.
I appreciate your vulnerability so much in sharing that with us. It's probably something that it's not easy necessarily to share, and your openness is really something that we're grateful for. I first heard personally about ayahuasca from a friend, a leadership coach who I know, who she and her husband went to South America and did a retreat. And I'd never heard of this before. And then I started hearing about it more and more through psychologists and learning about how it's used to treat depression, but also other terminal illnesses like cancer, addiction. Tell us a little bit more about what are some of the other uses and how medically it is, I guess, observed, so that people can do it safely and in a medically safe way.
Yeah, that's a great question. If I may, I'll recommend a book that really goes into a lot of detail about ayahuasca. It was written by an American medical doctor, and the book's called Fellowship of the River. And in the book, and this is to also answer your question, and this doctor became a practitioner himself and opened up a retreat center in Peru. So he brings Western medical knowledge and data, and then combines that with real life case studies that he observed firsthand in serving the medicine, as it's called, ayahuasca. And he details case studies of people who have healed depression, of course, anxiety, PTSD, even physical conditions like Crohn's disease and migraines. So it really can heal a wide variety of physical and mental illnesses. And many times physical illnesses they come from mental illness or emotional blockages. And so it's really fascinating and powerful just what these medicines can do, ayahuasca and others, of course. For me, it's been ayahuasca, and also microdosing psilocybin has been part of my psychedelic healing toolkit. But in terms of doing it safely, that is a big part of the bill that just passed in Colorado, is how these medicines can be served safely in our Western world. So, where they've been served and administered in indigenous tribes, it's been for thousands of years. So they know how to do it safely. And of course, now it's coming up here. And so there are risks involved, whether you do it here or there, because now that it's becoming more popular and more widely recognized, even in mainstream media, celebrities and quite a few celebrities have come out and said they've utilized these medicines. And so, of course, that brings risk, because then you have charlatans and folks like that. So, to your question, incredibly important to do your research, get good referrals. Some of the challenges involved in that are that some of these medicines are illegal, just like cannabis is still federally illegal. And even though Colorado just passed this landmark bill, psilocybin is federally illegal. So without going into too much detail, it really is just that overarching recommendation of do your research, get recommendations from people you know and trust to make sure you're doing it in a safe environment.
It's like that DYOR acronym also shows up here in finance and here. Do your own research, right?
That is true. Yeah, we've seen that with the fall of crypto, and anything that looks great can be great, and then there can be the downsides and risks. So certainly with psychedelic healing and plant medicines, yeah, DYOR for sure.
Well, there's a documentary actually that you turned me on to, Greg. We were talking offline one day about this, and for people who want to learn a little bit more, it's been interesting. I still haven't finished it all because I told you I always fall asleep watching TV, but I'm still working my way through it. But How to Change Your Mind is on Netflix. And I'm also going to go look up this book that you mentioned, The Fellowship of the River. But if you're curious to watch something, How to Change Your Mind is on Netflix. And it's a mini series documentary that discusses per episode different types of these natural healing options. So it's kind of interesting if you want to learn more about it. Are there any other resources that you think are great for people who are trying to get educated on this?
Yeah, so How to Change Your Mind is an excellent one, and it's based on the best-selling book of the same title, which goes into a lot more detail. But both are great for anyone who's coming in just completely cold. Hey, I want to learn more about this. I really do think those are great starting points. Fellowship of the River. There's so many books and podcasts out there. Aubrey Marcus has a podcast that's not solely based on psychedelics, but a lot of the topics and a lot of his guests talk about psychedelics. That's another good resource I'd recommend, from a podcast perspective. And then there are communities too. So I'm in a wonderful community called Empathic Health, which is a community for psychonauts, and therapists are part of this group. And it's just a place to learn and ask questions, whether or not you've ever done psychedelics, a place for support and integration. Right now, and this is why I was so passionate about passing this bill in Colorado. And I called it Prop 122 because that's just how we started calling it. But the name of it was the Natural Medicine Health Act. That's kind of a more heart-centered sounding name than just calling it Prop 122. But yeah, it's the Natural Medicine Health Act. But, just kind of along with all of this, and this kind of gets back to your question, Taylor, about safety, and find communities that have people you can trust. And I mentioned one now that I'm in that does that. It's certainly not the only one. But the information's out there. If you're seeking, and so yes, these are some good resources and good places to start for people who are curious.
Personally, it's something that I'm like I find fascinating. I also, as like a big weenie, like I'm kind of like, ooh, like I've heard about the benefits of it, and also have struggled with depression in my life. And we all have trauma. And I've thought about doing something like this, and then I'm like, oh, I'm scared. I'm scared. I don't know, Will. Like, have you ever thought about this? You scared of it too?
No, I do not. I think at one point you could say that I probably had a fear of the unknown, right? But I have definitely a similar personal journey. New Jersey expanded their cannabis laws about 5 years ago, and as someone who was a long SSRI taker by doctor's orders, when that expansion happened about 5 years ago, anxiety was one of the medical reasons of which you could get cannabis. And I decided to see a different doctor, and that's been working great for me. I would say that range of emotions that you talked about, Greg, that I can totally attest to that. Something I was dealing with for a while. I couldn't cry. I didn't feel like things were funny anymore. I kind of have a low key personality already, so that just added to it. It didn't really always take away the anxious feeling for me, though, too. So that was the part that was kind of frustrating, and I was happy to find new alternatives that worked better for me.
Yeah, a lot of your comments resonated with me, Will, especially as I alluded to before, not feeling the full range of emotion. And I mean, in terms of the fear of these psychedelic healing journeys, yes, they can be scary. And it is, you'll hear a lot of people that have done this work say, and I couldn't agree more, it's not, it is not for everyone. So I'm never saying to anyone, literally, you should do this. It really has to be such a personal decision after you do your research and figure out if it's something that calls to you. And I know that's kind of sounds out there, but that's kind of how I came to it. I started feeling called to it, realizing that, definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results, wasn't working, or I was living that definition of insanity, and something had to change, and it had to be something big, for lack of a better term. I was in therapy. I'm still in therapy, and I highly recommend therapy or some form of support and integration as you're going through this psychedelic healing journey, because it's not just about the journey. When I say the journey, I mean the actual retreat or whatever medicine you're choosing to use. It's not about that night or that weekend. Of course, that's going to crack you wide open. But then if you kind of just go back to your day to day after that, you're leaving a lot of opportunity on the table, because the thing about these medicines is the benefits and results from these journeys and experiences unfold over time. And when you're engaged in them, yes, first of all, they can be very scary. Second of all, they can be very confusing. So it's not as though answers just fall from the sky necessarily, although they can. And so that's where the post-journey integration, you'll hear that term a lot, integration, comes into play. And having community and or having personal help from an integration specialist or a therapist. Yes, again, we keep coming back to full range of emotion. These experiences can definitely be scary, and you need to be aware of that. And a big word you'll hear a lot if you're embarking on this journey is surrender. So it's all about surrender and also trust, which is kind of two sides of the same coin. Because once you trust, then you can surrender. And once you surrender, you can trust. And that just comes with, again, research and then embracing these experiences and then integrating the integration process after engaging in these experiences.
I love that. I'm going to repeat that. Once you trust, you can surrender. And once you surrender, you can trust. That's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah, and that's really just speaks to being open to whatever happens. And a lot, and Will, you can probably attest to this, man, a lot will happen. It just cracks you wide open. And so, yeah, like you said, Will, you laugh less. Maybe now you laugh more, but that also means you're going to cry more. And even laughter and tears are two sides of the same coin, right? Because it's that contrast. And so I certainly cry more. Man, do I cry more. And now I just let it come. One thing about crying is, or one piece of advice I can give, or one thing I've learned is a great way to save money is Amazon Subscribe and Save for tissues. I learned that the more I cry, the more I save. So that's probably the biggest tip I can share today. So just subscribe to Amazon, subscribe and save tissues, and just let the tears fall.
The tears fall. And maybe snacks too. If you get hungry, you get
Snacks,
the munchies or anything.
Snacks are good. Yeah, snacks are great.
Snacks are good. I mean, maybe it's part of the reason why I'm fearful. I don't know if I'm just like super lightweight. I had a funny reaction where I got pretty goofy one time from a CBD gummy, which sounds weird, but Will knows that story. And like since then, I'm kind of like, maybe I'll just stop there, you know?
Right.
They can get potent, those guys, though. You know, you never know.
It can be. It was something potent, and I was like, "Are you sure this is just CBD?" You know, I don't know.
Right.
Where did this come from? It was purchased at a reputable store, but you know, I'm not really sure about that. So,
well, most CBD products will even say on the label that there is a chance there is some THC in here.
Yes, there was. Let's just say that there was. Yeah. And it caught me off guard. No.
One more thing I can mention is something that I deal with often is stigma and fighting that stigma. I feel like even growing up, there was things like Seinfeld, for instance. Do you remember, for instance, do you remember when Peterman went away? He had a nervous breakdown. He went to Burma. What do you think he went to Burma for?
Yeah, I don't know. Ooh, I think now we know.
I always assumed he was going on a spiritual journey of sorts. I used to read about Native Americans going on spiritual journeys just growing up in school. And then you find out that was true. And, you know, they did practice that a lot in their culture. And they were very privy to things like peyote. So they did go on a lot of spiritual journeys and learn things.
Yeah, I agree with you, Will. The stigma has been there for so long. It started, unfortunately, in the 60s. We could have a whole discussion about that. But now, finally, it's swinging back around. That stigma is still there, but I think it's evaporating. And that's why legislation is important, raising awareness is important. And here I am on a business and marketing podcast, but we're really talking more about life and psychedelics and emotions. And so I think people are more willing to be vulnerable. I know I am. And also, it's not even that I decided one day, okay, I'm going to be vulnerable. Being on this journey actually just makes it easier to be vulnerable. So it's easy for me to say now, I suffer from depression. It's not easy to suffer from depression, but I don't keep it inside as I used to. And so I think that's been another really big benefit as well. And also specifically with depression for many and for me, it causes one to isolate and pull inside. And so not only has this journey helped me heal, and I'm not saying I'm healed, but I'm healing. And I think the healing is a lifelong pursuit, but I'm healing from depression. It's also helped me to be more vulnerable and to unisolate, if that's a word. And that's why I'm happy to share in venues like this, or with someone I meet on the street, or in the communities that I'm in, or with clients. So yeah, that stigma's there for sure, but I think it is evaporating gradually, and especially, but at an increasing rate over the past couple of years, just from everything happening and celebrities coming out and sharing their experiences. And also, I think even just the quote unquote everyday person is waking up to the fact that humans, Americans, and globally, there's just so much mental illness and suffering and anxiety and depression and trauma. And mainstream methods, I'm not here to say they don't work, but they're not doing enough. Or what they're doing is, we need more. So it's not an either or. It's not we need to get rid of that and do this. It's that we need more tools in the toolkit, and plant medicines and psychedelic medicines can be part of that, array of solutions.
Yeah, it is. It's great to raise awareness about all the tools in the toolkit. I think it's great to raise awareness and like push against the stigma as entrepreneurs and business owners to get out there and say, I suffered depression. And guess what? It's okay. A lot of people do. I did too. I had a huge bout of major depression in college. I didn't get out of bed for months. It was traumatic, and it kind of comes and goes throughout life. And so I think it's really awesome to have these authentic conversations and to look at the three of us here on this conversation today and say, we're all in it together. We're all learning from each other. We're all supporting each other. And it's part of being human and it's part of life. And the more that we can do to educate and to share and to build community, the better we can be together. So thank you, Greg. Thank you, Will. All right, let's, do you have a good, a good psychedelic dad joke? Will?
I mean, I've always personally, you know how mushrooms reproduce, right? Sporadically.
Okay, nice.
That's a zinger.
That's a great one.
Closing us out with a zinger. All right, Greg, close us out. Quick rapid fire questions. What's the best compliment you've ever gotten?
That I have to say two, because I love when people tell me that I'm funny and when people tell me that I'm empathetic. And I hear that from friends, but I also love to hear that from clients, just kind of bringing it into the business sphere.
Love it. All right, one more. What's your favorite job you've ever held?
Favorite job, I've never really liked having a job, though I've had them. So, I can just speak very generally. The favorite job I ever had was a job where I felt seen and where my feedback was actually heard, and I was treated with empathy and respect and being treated as though I was part of a team. And that made me, just as a lifelong entrepreneur, feel less unhappy that I was at a job, and certainly no disrespect to jobs at all. But just again, as an entrepreneur from the age of 5, when I had jobs, I wasn't always happy at those jobs. So yeah, treated with respect and empathy.
How can people find you online, get in touch, learn more about Gloss if they need your help with their website or their digital marketing?
Sure. So website is glosstech.io, glosstech.io. So that's our website. If you go to glosstech.io/empathy, you'll see some more information on how to get in touch with me personally. My main mode of social media connection is LinkedIn, and I believe that'll be in the show notes, but it's also on that page I just cited. So glosstech.io/empathy, and you can get in touch with me there. You can schedule a call with me there. There's also a video called 5 Reasons Your Website is Scaring Away Your Best Customers, and I'll just tie that quickly to my message of empathy. So on the page I cited, glosstech.io/empathy, is a video called 5 Reasons Your Website is Scaring Away Your Best Customers. And when I look at websites and when I talk to clients about websites, I always bring in empathy, and you've heard me mention that, and we've talked about it as a group here today. Empathy. A lot of times I'll see a company that I know is operating with empathy, but I don't see it on their website. Their website loads slowly, or it's hard to navigate or hard to read. And so on that page, you'll see a short video, and there's actually a lot more reasons than 5, which we can talk about if we connect. But that's really how we work with clients. Is we say, how can we look at your brand, your online presence, your social media presence? How can we take that empathy that I know you have, because you obviously are running a business because you want to help people. I don't care what kind of business you have, you want to help people. And ideally, you're passionate about wanting to help people with your product or service. Let's make sure that anyone who sees you online, anywhere they see you online, can feel that empathy coming through. And so if we connect, that's what we can talk about. And that's on that video on the page that I shared.
Awesome. Love it. I highly recommend Greg and his team. They do great work. And if you are looking for a website, reach out. Greg, thank you so much. Thank you, Will, as always. We hope you enjoyed this episode where we talked some psychedelic shizzle today. We'll see you next time, folks. Well, hey there. That was fun. I love how much mind-blowing and mind-opening shizzle our guests bring to us with every episode. We hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as we did. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast player so that you don't miss a beat of the Talking Shizzle podcast. And if you're listening on Apple, be sure to let us know what you thought and leave us a review. We'd love to hear from our listeners so that we can bring you all the good, juicy business growth shizzle that you would like to hear about. Get in touch with us and follow along at creativeshizzle.com or email us at podcast@creativeshizzle.com. Until next time, keep making your shizzle happen.